Greetings, it is I, Tantus Naravan Dracovin, Lord and Emperor of the Dracovin Empire, and welcome. Last time we finished up talking about a lot of the information in the world of Vampire the Masquerade. Now I'm going to be going on an expose of the various different clans and bloodlines, introducing some of their progenitors, information about them, their organization, a little bit of their history, just everything you might need to know if you're interested in either playing or being a member of one of these clans or just understanding them a little bit more. Now I'm going to start with the Camarilla clans, and I thought about going alphabetically, but I decided to start with one that's, in a way, my favorite clan, but my favorite clan not to play. It's a clan I find most entertaining, but the least wanting to be in any kind of my games or ever to have me play as one of them. The Malkavian. Now, the Malkavians are a kindred with a permanent insanity, a permanent derangement. They are primarily a member of the Camarilla, and the disciplines they use are, of course, auspex, obfuscate, and dementation, though it could possibly also be dominate in place of that, but that's a story I'll dive into a little bit later. They actually have a permanent derangement they start with they cannot overcome no matter what. They've been known as seers and oracles in the past. Some call that derangement a curse, others call it a blessing. And as I said, they could temporarily overcome their derangement with willpower, but never quite get rid of it. They're also known as pranksters, and their pranks range from being very benign to being just plain statistic and deadly. Now, their founder is the antediluvian Malkav. Malkav is said to be the second oldest antediluvian to exist. There are many myths and legends surrounding him, from what his actual name is, to what he lived with, to how he died, various different things. Though all Malkavians believe, even if he physically exists, or he doesn't, in some way spiritually he exists within the Madness network, whether this means he just possesses it as a whole, as a spirit with no physical body, or just while his body slumbers somewhere, his mind occupies it. Now, the Madness Network is this kind of psychic connection that all Malkavians have with each other, connecting them all together in a sort of this gibbering, mindless kind of thing that they can't really quite communicate with each other through because it is just madness. But it seems to actually have a purpose of organizing when they're getting together. Meetings can be randomly and strangely organized through the psychic network, that they all know when to meet and when to get together. But it just is sort of this feeling from the psychic connection they all have. Now, the clan originated in Epoch, the city, and it is said that Malkav had been a seer before he was embraced, and that his madness was part of his ability to see things, since it seems like Malkavians have these sort of visions. Now, post-flood is where things get very interesting. That's where the major rumor is, the major myth, that he was ambushed by other antediluvians and killed. Granted, it is hard to say, and many Malkavians believe that he still exists, as I said, in some way, whether he actually exists as being an undead creation, or his spirit just within the Madness Network. It is really hard to say. But legends do state that perhaps when Malkav would rise, he would emerge from this kind of collected neural connection of all the other Malkavians and basically come into being from all of them, or cause lots of damage using this network. So it's hard to say what would really happen if Malkav would wake up again, but probably nothing really good for the world. Now, Malkavians' history, of course, dates back to that long. Throughout the ancient civilizations, they oftentimes acted as oracles or seers or advisors. They were advisors to the eventual leaders of Rome. Unfortunately, with the fall of Rome, that made that the Malkavians actually fell from grace. And during the Dark Ages, they were this sort of low-class clan that very few of them were able to get into positions of power. Some of them still had their positions as seers or perhaps jesters, but many of them just weren't in great positions. Then came the Renaissance. The Renaissance, with all its craziness and turning against things like God and such, led to a resurgence of Malkavians. And then when the Victorian age happened, and insane asylums and the study of insanity began, well, Malkavians embraced this. They'd always studied insanity. They're permanently insane anyway. They always dived into the mind, and this was a wonderful position for them. Asylums were wonderful places to go, whether doctors or patients, and it was a fine place to feed on other people. It became a haven for them. When we broke into the modern age, the Malkavians had already been associated with the Camarilla, but they were worried about it because their own madness caused them to have this distrust and thought that they might be hunted out for the dangers that they have and forced to extinction. So the elders of Malkavian clan decided to do something called the Great Prank. No one knows how they quite did it, and the fact is, Malkavians that existed in the time, it seemed normal to them. They replaced dementation with dominate. And so there were just members of the clan that all of a sudden had dominate, and they never thought about having dementation. They didn't even register to them. There was, of course, a powerful sect that kept their dementation, and that was the sect that went the anti-trues, the ones that went to the Sabat. So the Sabat Malkavians kept it, and unfortunately, they dived deeper into madness during this time, and they gained a second dementia. So if you're playing a Malkavian anti-tribute from the Sabat, you will have two dementias. That's just a little note on that group. Now, of course, then, so they had dominate for some time, and then around 98, things changed, and no one knows why things changed, but something changed within Malkavian hierarchy that they sort of undid the Great Prank. And so then we have Malkavians that have dementation in the Camarilla back, rather than just being in a Sabat discipline anymore. But the thing is, then, there are still Malkavians that have dominate. They seem to kind of create their own sect then within the Camarilla, but now the majority of them are back to having this dementation. Now, when we talk about Malkavian organization, at first glance, there doesn't seem to be any whatsoever. They are the most chaotic of clans. It just seems like they exist. But then they have these gatherings created through the Malkavian Madness Network, and they just get together. And then when you think about it, they do have this kind of hierarchy, this kind of organization that exists, that majority of members of the Malkavians don't understand it at all and just go with the flow. In fact, very few Malkavians seem to know the actual goals for their clan, and so they just kind of go along with it. There are those that do, but it's kind of what is madness and what is actual machinations of the clan is really hard to say. Now, an important note about the Madness Network, since we've been talking about it a lot, it is not only the voices of every Malkavian connected to it. It is said the voices of any dead Malkavian exists within it, of course, too. So you kind of are listening to all the voices that are alive and dead at the same time, and that is why many Malkavians, they can either tap into it or they can sort of touch onto it, but it takes very powerful ones to actually begin to manipulate it and use this kind of psychic network of voices to their advantage. Very powerful levels of auspex and dementation are required to kind of tap into the power that is the Madness Network, and very few elders actually dive into it. There are those that dive into it that don't have this power and try to be seers or oracles or kind of people that predict the future as it is now. The unfortunate part about this predictions that the Malkavians can get, they do actually see glimpses of the future, is their interpretations of it can be either accurate or inaccurate or completely false. And you never know when one is lying, too. They might have seen something and decide it's funny not to tell you the truth and tell you something else. So it is very hard to judge the information you're getting from a vision of a Malkavian, though they actually do get them. Now, as I mentioned earlier, they have a tradition of pranking. It is actually a very important tradition within the Malkavian clan to prank, and they oftentimes end up sadistic. If you get one that's not so bad, you're getting lucky. Now, within the Camarilla, it's very rare that a Malkavian becomes a prince, but that doesn't mean they're not important in a city. Oftentimes, Malkavians will find themselves in very important positions of power, because Malkavians are unpredictable, but they also are, they want to get along with the Camarilla. They respect the Masquerade, even though they do some very crazy and ridiculous things. So there is sort of this balancing act between the Camarilla as a whole and Malkavians, that they keep them at arm's length, but as long as they keep them close, both of them get along very well. Pushing them away means they might lash out in very unpredictable and strange ways. Keeping them close, it means that you're going to expect some kind of strange things to occur, but you're going to expect them to at least hold back to a decent degree. One that'll keep you from getting in a lot of trouble. Now, Malkavians are actually the clan next to Tremere that likes to embrace very intelligent people. They're actually all about intelligence and research and learning. It's just that when they choose people, they tend to choose people that are very odd or strange, effectively one step away from insanity. That then they embrace them, they get that dementia, they get that insanity, and they were already pretty close to the way there. That's the ones they prefer. Oftentimes you will see very newer Malkavians will oftentimes have very tragic pasts or very dark secrets into them that have caused these kind of terrible mindsets to begin with that drive them, that when the insanity occurs, they were already well on the way to it. Now, there were some problems in amongst Malkavians, talking about it in the various editions. In the first edition, when they were published, they were made out to be very much more pranksters and jokers and very much more juvenile and crazy, so that when someone would play one, it would become more of a problem. They would be like the prankster, the group trickster, the comic relief, just like silly, completely out of the terms with all the other characters that existed, and it just didn't fit very well. Even the clan book that was originally published had a lot of problems like this, being very silly and ridiculous. When they republished in the second edition and from then on, they tried to make it that they were more under the control, the manipulation of what Malkov had created originally, and made them out to be more sadistic. So rather than, you know, cute bunny doing something silly, more like razor blade cutting kind of silly. But not silly anymore. Kind of dark and twisted now. They refined some of that violent and unpredictable nature without removing the unpredictability, and added this kind of dark and dangerous level to it that made them more threatening and fit more in with the entire themes of World of Darkness. So that's it for today. I introduced you to the clan of Malkavian. The Malkavians are a clan of madmen, of lunatics, each of them with a dementia. But that doesn't mean they don't understand the mind and insanity itself. They study it. They learn it. Many of them live and work around psychiatric hospitals. Diving deep into the mind, they are one of the more intelligent clans. And yet, they're maddened and hounded by the fact that they have these needs to prank and this need to destroy and to dive into the madness which plagues them and to share it with others. Malkavians are an interesting bunch that has seen an evolution from the childish prankster to the dark and twisted madman, psychopath. And along the way, they've gained a love by many people that enjoy them for that level of craziness that you can still encounter with them. That madness that gives a lot of entertainment and almost those little jokes in a dark and twisted world. That doesn't mean you should trust one. Doesn't mean that you should turn your back when you don't know if a prank is coming, because it might. Then again, they could be a great friend to you. So if you have any questions, comments, anything you want to say, anything you think I left out, please leave in the comments below. Please like, share, and subscribe to support the channel, the Empire, and the work I do. If you want to show some extra support, you can always check out my Patreon, link in the description below. But regardless, until next time, I bid you farewell.